That is all in for this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Happy Monday. Good evening, Rachel.
Happy Monday. Exactly. Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you at home for joining us this hour. Happy Monday indeed. Remember this?
The pundits like to slice and dice our country into red states and blue states. Red states for Republicans, blue states for Democrats. But I've got news for them, too. We worship an awesome God in the blue states, and we don't like federal agents poking around in our libraries in the red states. We coach Little League in the blue states, and yes, we've got some gay friends in the red states. There are patriots who opposed the war in Iraq, and there are patriots who supported the war in Iraq. We are one people, all of us pledging allegiance to the Stars and Stripes, all of us defending the United States of America.
That was 10 years ago. We are one people, all of us pledging allegiance to the United States of America. It is true. We are one people. But we are also still blue states and red states. That did not go away. Except now it's possible that the blue state, red state thing does not adequately encompass the options for governance in America in 2014. Because what we are actually seeing now in terms of the options for governance is not just blue states and red states, but rather blue states and then red states and then Oklahoma. Oklahoma is like turning it up to 11. Oklahoma is something else. Wikipedia does these really helpful little election maps that show not just the vote, but the strength of the vote, county by county for presidential elections. This was how Oklahoma voted in 2000, mostly red, just a little smattering of blue. Then this was 2004, Bush versus Kerry. Then this was 2008, McCain versus Obama. Then this was 2012. Romney versus Obama. I mean, you stack them all up. I mean, this is Oklahoma trending over time. If Oklahoma gets any redder, it's going to start blistering and peeling. Oklahoma is so red, it redefines the realm of possible in state governance. I mean, it's just completely off the charts. I mean, take the issue of the minimum wage right now. In the last few months, a whole bunch of blue states have moved to raise the minimum wage. States like Connecticut and Maryland and Minnesota and Hawaii and Massachusetts, blue states have been raising the minimum wage, or they're in the process of raising the minimum wage. Red states, normal red states, they are not raising the minimum wage, even though it's a very popular policy idea. That's created some awkwardness around this issue for some Republican politicians. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is an interesting example. He's a Republican politician who's basically governing in a blue state. He ended up vetoing a minimum wage rise that the rest of his state government had passed, and then the voters overturned his veto with a ballot measure. Now, in Alaska, Republicans there, they're afraid that the minimum wage is going to get raised by a ballot initiative in Alaska as well. So the Republicans in the Alaska legislature have been scrambling to try to pass a law that will let them block a minimum wage hike. A minimum wage hike which people in the state really like and that they know people would vote for if they get a chance. So faced with this popular policy of raising the minimum wage, we've seen blue states raising the minimum wage, red states fighting to not raise it. But Oklahoma's taking it to a whole new level. Not only is Oklahoma not raising the minimum wage, Oklahoma is the only state in the country that has now banned raising the minimum wage. They're not just not raising it as a state, they're stopping anybody else from raising it too. If your town or your city wants a local ordinance to raise the minimum wage within your city limits, or you want to require companies to offer paid sick days or paid vacation days, the state government in Oklahoma has now banned any town in the state from doing that. See, there's blue states, there's red states, and then there's Oklahoma. Take the marriage issue as well. There's 17 states that recognize marriage rights for same-sex couples now. And some of those were decided in the courts. But blue states like Illinois and Hawaii and Rhode Island and Washington State, increasingly they're just passing marriage equality laws through the regular legislative process. That's the blue states. Red states are not only not passing marriage equality laws through their normal legislative process, red states are also fighting to hold on to their existing marriage bans, even as the federal courts, with increasing frequency, are striking those bans down as unconstitutional. So, blue states are passing marriage equality laws. Red states are fighting to hold on to their bans against marriage equality. That's normal blue states and normal red states. But in Oklahoma, just being a normal red state is not enough. Fighting to keep gay people from getting married, in Oklahoma, that is not enough. In Oklahoma, the prospect of gay people ever having the right to get married brought Oklahoma Republicans to the point of considering banning marriage for everyone. Banning marriage for straight people, banning marriage altogether in Oklahoma because the gays ruined it.
Critics are calling it a political stunt. Supporters say it's what Oklahomans want.
They're willing to have that discussion about whether or not marriage needs to be regulated by the state at all.
Representative Mike Turner says his fellow conservative lawmakers feel the same way, finding a way around the court's decision to strike down Oklahoma's ban on same-sex marriage by not providing marriage at all.
Would it be realistic for the state of Oklahoma to say we're not going to do marriage, period?
That would definitely be a realistic opportunity, and that's something that would be part of the discussion.
Oklahoma Republicans proposing that there shouldn't be marriage anymore officially in Oklahoma if the gays can do it too. There are blue states, there are red states, and then there is Oklahoma. That's as far as the meter goes. When it gets to Oklahoma, something's about to blow up, right? I mean, right now with Oklahoma on this map, you end up actually making the other red states look kind of liberal to the point that it makes them uncomfortable. But now, even Oklahoma has outdone itself. Tonight, Oklahoma's Republican Governor Mary Fallin signed a new law which makes you pay a special fee. It will essentially fine people for the crime of using solar power. If you want to use the sun for electricity instead of your local coal-fired power plant, the redder-than-red state Oklahoma government has figured out a way to make you pay for that crime. This bill passed the Oklahoma Senate last month. It passed the Oklahoma House on a vote of 83-5 after no debate. And tonight, Republican Governor Mary Fallin signed it. In the House, the bill was actually sponsored by the same guy who wanted to ban marriage for straight people. But while his banning straight marriage idea didn't go anywhere in Oklahoma, his sun tax is actually going to become law. It actually became law tonight. This idea, however, was not born in Oklahoma. A couple of years ago, the corporate-funded network of conservative state legislators called ALEC started adopting model legislation to try to get as many states as possible to punish people for using solar electricity. They've tried to overturn the standards in states that say that utilities have to get a certain proportion of their energy from renewable sources. And like this bill in Oklahoma, they've tried to tax or fine people who have solar panels on their house and are making electricity that way. So if you're concerned about energy for whatever reason, if you think we ought to be trying to move on from fossil fuels like oil and coal and gas and pick more sustainable ways of generating electricity, this is kind of a good news, bad news story, right? Because on the one hand, here's the fossil fuel industry and the reddest state in the union trying to destroy the sun, right? Trying to destroy any chance of alternative energy taking hold. On the other hand, it's sort of nice that they care. Right? Maybe this means that alternative energy, like solar energy, is now viable enough to be an actual threat to the bottom line of the oil and gas and coal industries. They always say it's the 4 stages, right? First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Well, solar has apparently moved on from being ignored or laughed at, and now they're fighting it. So maybe that's good news for solar, sort of. What's fascinating about this Oklahoma move tonight, though, is that it is the first one of these that has worked. This here is an ad, an anti-solar ad put out by the lobbying arm for the electric utility companies. They've got anti-solar ads because they've been running these anti-solar campaigns in states all over the country. That last ad we were just showing, that was the utility company's trade group. This one here, this one is by Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers group. It's an ad against renewable energy in Kansas, trying to make the case that solar energy is just like Obamacare. In Arizona, they came up with a plan to fine people $50 to $100 every month if you used solar energy. Imagine solar energy in Arizona. Crazy idea, right? But the LA Times this weekend had a nice write-up about how Barry Goldwater Jr., And other Republicans not affiliated with the Koch brothers networks or ALEC joined the effort against the anti-solar bill in Arizona and persuaded the all-Republican state body that had to rule on the issue to bring the solar users fee from $100 a month potentially down to $5 a month, a much more reasonable fee to help pay for maintenance and overhead issues on the electric grid. In Kansas, the Koch brothers-led campaign to kill renewable energy in Kansas, that got as far as passing through the Kansas State Senate this year, but they were able to stop it in the House, thanks in part to the fact that having some non-fossil fuel energy is actually a really freaking popular thing. 91% of Kansas residents say they believe future Kansas energy needs can best be met by greater use of renewables. 72% of Republicans, 75% of independents, 82% of Democrats say they all support a bill passed in 2009 that requires Kansas utilities to use renewables to generate at least 20% of their electricity by 2020. Those are huge numbers. Look at that. 75% of independents, 72% of Republicans, 82% of Democrats. That is really, really popular policy, which the utility companies and groups like ALEC and the Koch brothers networks are trying to kill all over the country. They are trying to kill renewable energy in the states, and they have not succeeded anywhere yet except Oklahoma, where they succeeded tonight, and where you will now have to pay a fine if you want to use the sun for power. Here's the question. Did these guys win? Did the utility companies and the Koch brothers network and ALEC and all these conservative groups, did they win against solar energy? Did they win for the first time tonight in Oklahoma because it's Oklahoma? Because Oklahoma is so far off the freaking ideological chart in terms of its state governance that they don't just refuse to raise the minimum wage, they ban raising the minimum wage, where they see gay people getting married and the reaction is to ban marriage for everyone because the gay people have ruined it. I mean, did warming yourself with the sun instead of coal just become a punishable offense in Oklahoma because it's Oklahoma? And what happens there really just doesn't apply to the rest of the country. It's too off the chart. Or is what just happened in Oklahoma tonight, is it just first? Is Oklahoma the only one? Is it such an ideological standout that it stands alone here? Or was Oklahoma just the first one to fall, and these kinds of laws are coming to your state soon? Joining us now is someone who fought one of these laws in another state and won. Kansas, the home of Koch Industries, saw a hard-fought battle this year to hold on to their renewable energy law. Repealing the law went through the state Senate, but it got stopped in the House. How did they stop it in Kansas? Dorothy Barnett is the executive director of the Climate and Energy Project in Kansas. She joins us live tonight from Wichita. Ms. Barnett, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me tonight.
So Kansas is not Oklahoma level red, but it's quite red. Why do you think that your side was able to fend off this anti-solar, anti-wind legislation? How were you able to win in your state?
You know, I would say, Rachel, the opportunity for Kansas to win on renewable energy really was centered around bringing together a diverse network of partners from all walks of life, regardless of whether they were in a red state. They all can see the economic benefits of the giant wind turbines that are now generating across our state.
We reached out to the Koch brothers group tonight, to Americans for Prosperity, about this fight in your state, and they told us, they sort of bragged that they have spent $300,000 on this fight so far in Kansas. They seem sort of excited in their statement to us about the prospects of being able to win this one eventually. How far outgunned have you felt here? Can you talk a little bit about the resources on both sides of the argument in your state?
Sure. So the Climate and Energy Project is a very small nonprofit based here in Kansas. We don't have a huge budget. We have a small number of staff. What we're fortunate to have are relationships that we've built over the last 7 years with a broad group of people in the agriculture, in economic development, in chambers, in renewable energy advocates, really all focused around one goal, which is moving clean energy policy forward in Kansas. And so although we were outmanned financially to the tune of probably 10-1, we were able to have manpower and lots of volunteers reaching out to their legislators.
When the Koch brothers operate nationally, I think that people on the other side of fights from them are getting better and better at identifying their hand in political arguments, being able to identify them and their networks as sort of undeclared funders in some of these fights. In Kansas, which is, of course, the home of Koch Industries, I wonder if that sort of cuts both ways. Obviously, they're a very important employer in the state, very influential, not just with legislators, but with everybody who's touched by their group, by their business group in the state. I wonder if it ends up being a more delicate issue in terms of talking about somebody with such deep pockets fighting in those issues in your state when that's also where their home is.
It is different here in Koch's backyard. But, you know, when people see Americans for Prosperity running patently false TV ads trying to tie renewable energy costs to our former governor, Kathleen Sebelius, and to Obamacare, it almost becomes ludicrous. You know, when they bring out false information about the cost of renewable energy, when we know for fact, based on documents from our Public Utility Commission, that the renewable portfolio standards, those green energy mandates, as they like to call them, are not costing Kansans the kind of money that these ads try to portray.
Dorothy Barnett, Executive Director of the Climate and Energy Project. Your fight in Kansas is becoming sort of a case study for people who are fighting these anti-renewable energy things all around the country right now. Thanks for helping us understand your work. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right, lots more to come tonight, including a brand new debunction junction tonight, possibly the most awkward one yet. That's ahead. Stay with us.